Hello and welcome to another episode of Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged. Here at Talksicology, we talk all things addiction, recovery, and mental health. Tonight's guest, best-selling author, Blake E. Cohen. I'm your co-host, Jason Cabello, and as always, your host and mine, Joseph Gorordo. Genuine claps.
How do you make your one clap sound like so many claps? That's an amazing talent.
Yeah, thank you. I work on it.
Jason, we missed you last week.
I missed you guys last week. It was, as you had mentioned, I was out in Florida taking care of some pretty heavy stuff. Give you the Reader's Digest version is, my girlfriend was attacked pretty, it happened
Brutally?
in 2017. Yes. And, they caught the guy and we went to Florida to wrap everything up. So everything got wrapped up, everything came out and, as it should have, justice was served.
Lock him up, though.
Pretty much over 100 years. Yeah.
That'll do it.
So, yeah. So,
You know what? I missed you so much. I forgot to welcome everybody else. Welcome to Talksicology, you guys. This is the greatest weekly live streamed podcast on mental health and addiction in the history of the universe. And
it is.
So welcome to our returning listeners. Welcome to new listeners. As you guys know, we love to keep it interactive here. So if you want to throw up some comments on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever it is you're streaming this from, we are so happy to have you. And hello to all of y'all checking in.
Hello.
Yeah. So, also, I'm really bad about remembering to tell people to like and follow and leave a review.
Like and follow and share.
Man. Yeah,
it's live. Share it with your friends. Get your friends on there. Chat it up in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Besides legal issues in Florida, what else you been up to lately? You've been listening to any good music? South by is coming up here in Austin.
Yeah. I mean, as far as Florida goes, I got connected with an old friend of mine. I think I had mentioned it a few weeks back that we were trying to get his son into treatment. And the kid just isn't ready, and he'd go to treatment and come out. And then I got on the phone with him yesterday and was kind of just like trying to tell him like, listen, man, I've been there, blah, blah, blah. And of course it's not the kid's fault. He's where he is, you know what I mean? But was pretty much talking to me like I had no idea what I'm talking about. And you know
don't know my life.
And, and I think it's important for us to qualify because we talk about a lot of these things about the pain and suffering of addiction and how dark times were. And, I, for one, was not always, this happy all the time, this happy, joyous and free. I had some very, very dark years. And I know you and I talk all the time, Joseph. And, you did too, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from 18 to 24, I was full blown IV heroin addict, and I thought I looked good at the time, but in retrospective, it was not a good time at all.
No. I mean, I have some pictures that if my mom is watching and they pop up, she's gonna be mad. So if we do
trigger warning for those.
Yeah.
Well, let's see some pictures for our live streamers. Look at that.
Yeah. Popped in the schnoz on that one. I think that's where I got some of these teeth all nice and knocked out and chipped up. But that was me probably about to. Oh, that's the one. My mom.
Syringe?
That is a syringe. That was. Oh. Yeah, that was a plunger, and my mom is freaking out right now if she's watching because there she is. I see the Jason. So my mom absolutely hates that picture, and that picture right there, I saved it because I thought I looked good, and it was probably one of those times. I don't remember. I mean, as you could see, I was in pretty much rough shape, And I would take pictures of myself to be like, do I look presentable? Is anybody going to know I'm high? And I took that picture and I was probably like, nope, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
look like $1 million. Let's get out there and convince everybody that I'm not doing drugs.
You know, I think Greg has some pictures of me too, but I'll tell y'all, there was times that I would go out with buddies of mine to
that
try
baby
to.
looks terrified of you, rightfully so.
Who that's my niece. So my sister thought it was a good idea to let me hold her child. I mean, look how skinny I am.
Wow. Yeah.
But
Cool
I
beard.
was this is a mugshot. This is a mugshot. This is Guadalupe County. I weighed about 130 pounds in this picture I saw. They put it in your booking records when you. This is an arrest for felony theft auto.
Man, it's still kind of like, oh, look at that, dude,
Yeah.
that DB, I'll say.
Oh man, I wish I still had those Doc Martens. You can tell they're Doc Martens from the bottom of the sole.
Yeah, man, you look like you were ready to tear up Hot Topic.
Oh yeah. This was in the stoner days. This was before the things got bad. But I was so bad at one point that like my fellow drug addict friends would not want me to come hustle with them because people noticed me. I was the guy that got watched while we were trying to steal bottles of Tide from the Target.
Oh man, you did it. I was there too. I used to collect the receipts. I would go to every Winn-Dixie and Publix in Dade and Broward County and collect all the receipts. And then I'd go back, I'd put on like a dress shirt and then go back when it was really busy and find what was on there and then just walk around and take it to the return section. That was one of my scams.
But we talk about it like, and it's I think there seems to be some levity when we talk about this kind of stuff. I think partially because of just like the relief of not being there anymore, right?
That's a lot of it. You know what I mean? Because I do not like to make light of it, especially for people who are in that situation right now. It's not like I'm poking fun at anybody at where they are, but I've been there and I've come through and I made it out. And God forbid I never want to go back there ever again. And when we talk with our friends who have been through the same thing, it's kind of like, man, I can't believe how fucked up I was. Like, and it definitely is. It's like a sigh of relief when I talk about this shit.
Yeah. Well, there's a line in the Big Book where Bill says, I think he was talking about himself in third person and trying not to make it seem like he was talking about himself. But, he talks about like former alcoholic returning like a new man, and everything in his disposition shouted that he had found a solution or some language like that. I think that's true, because it can be difficult for people who haven't been through it to process like how happy we seem most of the time, versus the the real suffering that we've been through and inflicted on the people around us.
Absolutely. It's a relief to not have to live like that anymore. To see what my eyes looked like and just how dead I was, and like I feel like a kid now. You know what I mean? Like I used heavily for 20 years and then never thought I'd get out. So now it's just like, and I wasted my 20s, my 30s, and the beginning of my 40s. So it's like I'm essentially a teenager if you do the math.
Absolutely. But now you're in recovery and you have a whole host of new habits, hobbies, and interests. One of which I believe is
habit. Oh, what we're gonna?
You like to read. You like to read books, right? That's one of your habits.
I do.
Yeah,
it is.
You like to read.
I like I said, I'm a creature of habit, so I will read the same stuff over and over. I still like Charles Bukowski stuff. I still like a lot of biographies like Johnny Carson, or like a lot of like old showbiz stuff I love. But I'll tell you what I just finished, and it was fantastic. It's a book called I Love You More. And it is by tonight's guest.
Oh no.
The best-selling author, Blake E. Cohen, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, Blake Cohen.
That transition, Jason, was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Amazing.
We were working for 4 days straight. and I have my cue cards right here, and it went to plan.
I'm blown away.
Transitions is one of the biggest things that Jason brings to the structure of the show. He really he's good at
so
it.
Smooth. I can't believe that. Thank you for that.
So everybody in the chat, please welcome Blake. A little bit about him before we let him tell you is, Blake is a certified addiction professional in Florida. He is a certified life coach. He's got a degree that he also got. He's got 2 degrees. Oh, he's working on his master's degree right now in Nova Southeastern.
Almost there.
Almost there.
One semester.
His aim is to assist those that have been directly or indirectly affected by substance use disorders towards healing. Part of that is his book, I Love You More. He is also super cool, is a board member for NAMI Broward County. So his work has grown beyond just substance use disorders and his mental health in general in Florida, which, based on all the Florida Man headlines, the NAMI must be pretty busy down there
it definitely is busy, especially in Broward County. And honestly, I think they brought me on mostly because I specialize in substance use disorders, and they've never had anybody on their board who specializes in that. And I've made it my sole mission to start including substance use disorders as a part of the discussions around mental illness. They do sort of separate them for some reason. So I'm trying to help them understand, like, they're all in one.
Yeah.
So
it's wild though. I do a yearly lecture at the University of Texas, and I go down to the School of Social Work. And part of why the professor asks me to go down to speak to her classes is because they don't think they're going to be working with substance abuse, and I kind of go and give them a little bit of a rude awakening on the fact of that 9 times out of 10, right? If it's approached from substance abuse or a mental health angle, you're going to end up with both, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. You're absolutely right.
Didn't mean to cut you off there, Jason.
No, it's good. Please keep going. It's more interesting than anything I was going to say.
I got a comment before that we jump into anything, is that on the photos that you guys posted.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason, like, you looked awful and you look great now. The syringe one was my favorite. And it's just crazy when you say that even into your 40s, like, I can't believe your age. Like, you are not just, you don't just look youthful. And I mean this in a compliment, honestly. You also behave youthfully. And I'm not saying you're like a child.
Well,
I'm saying, like, you have a very youthful spirit about you. But Joseph, your pictures were like modeling pictures, except for like the one, besides like one like Howard Stern looking picture, that they were like modeling pictures, dude. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah,
that mugshot should go
viral. I've always had an aura about me.
That gave me some feels, Joseph. That is like, that was pretty. You
made me think of a quote, and I don't know who said it, but there's a famous quote along the lines of, "The goal in life is to die young, as old as possible, or as late as possible."
That's the goal. It is.
That's actually my quote from my book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
So yes. So speaking of qualifying, Blake, the end of your book, where your father got to write a little something on there and talk about where you came from. Let's talk about what led you into recovery, because that was pretty little heart-wrenching hearing your dad talk about that. I read it, didn't listen to it.
Yeah, listening. Does that count as reading?
If you have my wife, it does.
It's funny that father's perspective part. It's still something that, like, the first time I read it, I had to bring it to a therapist to get through it, so that I can actually get through, because it's just not something. It's not the way that my family talks. Like, I'm trying to change that dynamic where we're more open about our feelings, but it's just not how my parents raised us. So I've never actually known, until my dad gave me that chapter when I asked him for it. I've never known how my dad felt about my recovery or about my addiction. He never told me. I saw the frustration while things were going down. And when I was in very early recovery or going into treatment the last time, I saw that frustration, but I never knew in terms of my recovery how my parents felt. The only thing I've ever seen from them was like, hey, do us a favor, like don't talk about it so much. And
Wow.
they think they got to a point where they accepted, they're like, Blake can't keep his mouth shut. And they're okay with it. And so when I read that, and particularly the part that like is hardest for me, and I happen to have the book right here.
Oh, it just so happened.
Yeah, I just happen to have it. The part Blake never made me so proud as when he finally came home. Not only was he committed to recovery, he made the decision to dedicate his life to helping others with this insidious disease. Actually, that wasn't it. Blake returning, blah, blah, blah.
It was still good though.
Yeah.
It was so good. My dad's never said that to me. I'm jealous already.
It's just the way that he says, at one point he says, I love my son and I'm so proud of who he is today. And I can count on like 2 fingers how many times I've heard I love you from my parents.
wow.
So to me, it was so emotional to see it in writing. It was just such a cool experience.
God. So I have so many questions already, but like, I mean, so I'm curious, when you talk about how like, you knew they were upset with you when you were using, but like, you never really like, do you think that that it was more a matter of you, shrinking the ego enough and recovering, getting enough into like a life of recovery enough that you were able to even start thinking about how it had impacted them?
So that is the perfect question, actually. So that's what, yeah, good job. That's what inspired me to write the book and why I feel that family is so impactful and why I've really always had this interest and focus for my career on the family piece.
Yeah.
Because it is what motivated me to finally change, was that out of nowhere sudden realization once my family. So the story really is that I was in treatment and my family essentially discovered everything that I was up to.
Not just what they suspected, but like
Not
hard,
like-
concrete proof.
And outside of just the substances, I mean, like of the stealing, of the behaviors that surround when we can't get your substances and you do other things you shouldn't be doing. Yeah. They put together bank records. They went to my bank account. They talked to friends. They talked to girlfriends. They talked to a lot of people and they put together everything. And it painted the image of a person who they didn't like anymore. And honestly, to me, it was always sort of fake, right? So like if nobody knew about this double life that I had and the secret part of my life, then it wasn't real. So then as soon as my family found out about it, it was like all of a sudden my world came tumbling down because I realized that that's me. I was the one doing all of those terrible things. And when I called my dad to talk to him, he basically said to me, like, good luck finding your way home from treatment. We want nothing to do with you. Goodbye.
Wow.
And for him to say that, I knew that I must have really hurt them. And it was all in that moment of realizing like, oh my God, I'm affected so much more than myself. They weren't just acting all along when they were like, I thought they were pretending to be upset when they would catch me doing things I shouldn't be doing or sending me to treatment the first time. I didn't get why they cared so much. I'm hurting myself. So why
Who they love very much.
Right. So why do you care what I'm doing to me? And it wasn't really until that moment and moving forward of where I realized how much addiction affects everyone around you, and especially those closest who love you.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
like a hand grenade,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's a saying that they use they use it. It's pretty popular in recovery groups in Mexico. I don't know if there's an equivalent in the U.S., but they talk about how addiction hurts miles away. And one of the things that I realized, because like I did most of my using in cities away from my family, right? Like I wasn't very often like near them, and I have a lot of family in Mexico and that scattered all over the place. That it never even occurred to me that like they were also going through this with me, even though they lived time zones away, hundreds of miles away. But that's the impact we have, right?
Yeah. Do you remember that Kevin Bacon game where it was like 7 degrees of of Kevin Bacon.
Six degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's sort of the same thing, even with addiction. Like you can go out and see, like, it's affecting my parents, but it's affecting the work, and the work is affecting a client that they have. You can see it just goes, it really is like more than a hand grenade. It's like a nuclear bomb that just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. One person's illness has such a large effect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, even like when we're talking about, nationwide, right? When we talk about like the cost of addiction, which Jason, I know you've done recently, like a series of videos about the cost of addiction. Whether you have an addict directly in your life or not, you felt it, right? Some of your tax dollars have gone to paying medical bills. The insurance for your business has gone up because you got broken into, or your cars got broken. The ripple effects of addiction, but inversely. Right, with life in recovery, and even more so as professionals in recovery, right? That same thing can happen inversely, right? I'm sure you guys have both had the experience, right? Of like you help somebody who helps somebody who helps somebody, and somehow you catch wind of it, and it's just like, oh my god, incredible.
It's weird experiences. That's always weird when it happens, when someone comes up to you and tells you, like, actually, this person knows you, and they did this, and you helped them do that, and it's just insane.
Yeah. So, Blake, two real quick questions. One is, what kind of recovery do you practice? And because we're open to all the different kinds of recovery, we love it all, right? If it helps people get better,
all of them.
But also, if I think a lot of non-addicts are often very interested in the idea of like that moment, like when you decided or were ready, or
yeah. So
what was your moment, and what do you do now? Like, what's your
that moment? It was that moment that my dad said that to me. So I had been in treatment once before, and they had introduced me to the 12 steps. I was also in a drug court program at one point that made me go to meetings. And for me, at the time, the 12-step meetings weren't for me, as they often are for like the first time you go. They weren't for me. I used every excuse in the book. I heard one person, I think, mention Jesus in the corner, and I'm like, oh, I'm Jewish. There's my out. I don't know if and I went home and told my family, like, they want me to go to these AA meetings, but all they do is talk about Jesus. And I used that as an excuse for a long time. But after relapsing after drug court, I knew sort of in my head where the solution lied. So I was really waiting to be stopped. And that second time around, when that whole thing happened with my dad on the phone, it's crazy. And not to make this too much of like a God type of thing, but I was walking back out of there, like feeling devastated and crying, and left the phone room. And I cried like a baby for 2 days. It was so dramatic. Like they had to bring all the therapists into my room. And at one point, I'm walking by the steps on the wall, and they sort of just made sense for the first time. Like I was sitting by myself in this room, and the steps are just sitting right there, and I'm reading them. I'm like, powerless and unmanageable. Yeah.
That's like, oh boy. Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds pretty accurate. And I get up to walk away.
Let me ask you kind of a weird question. So like when you're talking about those 2 days that you spent just like inconsolable, were you sad for you, or were you sad for them?
Man, I don't know. I think everybody, I just think everything. I think it was just the realization that the identity that I've been portraying to everybody, and the person that I've been trying to be, and the juggling act of trying to manage my addiction and the persona, and that my family won't talk to me anymore. And just, it was just everything all combined in one. And it was just like an emotional release I just was devastated all around. And I actually remember the one therapist who was the spiritual counselor at this treatment center brought me into his office, named John McDougall, who was like 5 feet tall, bald, very roly-poly, walked funny, and had this huge collection of shiny shoes. And it was the most interesting guy.
Wait, like glitter or like highly polished?
Glitter. Like, I mean, had every day wore these different shoes, and that was his thing. Yeah. And he pulled me in, and I'll never forget it, because I was telling him, like, my parents aren't going to ever want to talk to me again. My girlfriend's going to hate me. Everybody hates me right now. And his advice was just be patient and love them. Be patient and love them. And he told me a little bit about what loving them meant, which meant basically loving myself and doing the right thing and treating people as if I would want to be treated.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I walk back in and I'm walking by this person's room after seeing the steps, after sitting there with John, going in there, I'm looking at the steps. And then I walk by this guy's room and he's praying. And I've never prayed at this point in my life. And I just went in my room and was like, I know God's a part of this program, so I'm going to give this a shot. And went in my room and just kind of got on my knees because I didn't know what else to do. And just said like something along the lines of like, God, I've never prayed before. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I need help right now. I'm miserable. And like, I give up. Like, what do I got to do? You know, it was one of those types of conversations.
You're giving me goosebumps because like the last time I went to treatment, the same story happened, you know, not, you know, not all the details, but that moment of like, I'm going to get on my knees and pray something or another. And it's like from like your core.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not thinking about like, well, this is how I'm supposed to pray, or like, well, God wants to hear this or this, you know, it's just,
well, and I think about the big book explains it well. And I read this later on, but I think this is where the program works so well, is that essentially you need some type of degree of humility, a degree of humility. And I think that was my first degree of humility, of where I finally gave up and was like, okay, I need to ask for help. What do I got to do? And I got on my knees and actually had that humility for a moment. And it was literally after that where I would go to meetings and everything would just make sense for me. And I said this the other day, and honestly, I still feel this way. I don't love AA. In fact, I don't really like AA. I'm grateful to AA, like very much so. I appreciate the program so much and what it's done for me. And I still show up every single week. I don't like it. It's ruined my fun. It's makes me look hard at myself constantly. I have to do hard work all the time. I've got a group of guys who call me out on every little thing that I do. And I don't like AA because of that, but I'm grateful for it because I need that.
Yeah. I found a wallet. I think it was like about 2 weeks ago. I was walking out of a store and I just saw a wallet on the floor and I picked it up and I was like, it was pretty hefty too. And I was like, oh, it feels like there's a couple $100 there. And I'm like, if you open that, that's the first step to you like fucking up some way down the line. So I'm like, didn't even open it, went back into the store and was just like, I just found this wallet outside. And, you know, if you're going to go look through it, that's fine. But it's out of my hands now. But yeah. Man, my fun gets ruined all the time because of this spiritual shit.
No, and the fun of like, if we go do something that we think is bad, quote unquote, like the guilt and shame that we feel now that we're living the spiritual path is like awful.
It eats at you, you know?
Yeah.
It eats at you know. And I used to do 10 terrible things before noon most days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh man, what a it's like what we were talking about with those pictures earlier, right? Like it's how far anyone in recovery has come, you know, even to live one day sober from like the depths of where we get to.
You guys worded it well, and Jason, you said it actually, that you posted that picture because you thought you looked good in that picture.
Yeah, I saved it because I thought I looked. That was probably the best I had looked around that time. You know,
you look much better now, Jason.
Oh, thank you. You're just saying that because
what I was going to say was actually that one of the last pictures I took before going to treatment was this picture of me. And so I'm 6'2" and I weigh about 190 now. So I'm like a healthy weight. I weighed about 145 when I went into treatment. And my skin was gray. But I remember posting this picture on Instagram of me shirtless with abs because I was so skinny I had abs. But I'm like, yo, I got abs. So I'm showing these bad boys off. And posted thinking how good I look. And it was
like, so many likes from the ladies on this one. Right?
Yeah, my skin was so gray that I almost looked tan. So like it was like a nice tan with a six-pack.
I have this one, so I couldn't even take a picture of it because I didn't have phone service at the time to share it. But I had an abscess on my arm at one point, and it made it look like I had this big muscle. And I remember just looking in the mirror and being like,
Oh yeah,
I'm looking good.
that's it.
Jason. Oh man.
That's
Oh,
great.
Good,
oh.
good times.
Man, I
But,
thought this was going to be a real heartfelt episode.
Well, okay, so let's get
me,
to the
dude.
Jason,
let's
get us
get
back
to the
on track.
book, man. So I was reading one of the stories in the book, and Marco, when he is in jail, and I mean, the whole story is absolutely fantastic, compelling, but it brought me back when you said that, when you wrote that he was just looking at the clock and waiting for someone to show up. Like that's the part that hit me the most. Like when I see somebody in active addiction just kind of sitting around, like you could tell they have nowhere to go, just like sitting on a bus stop or something like that. And it's just the time that I spent in that in between time. Like I'm not out hustling, I'm not high, I am just in this complete fucking limbo purgatory. And it's like that was my absolute hell, was those in between times. And just the way you captured it in that, man, that was fantastic. So where did you get the inspiration to write some of these stories?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. So the point of the book itself, there was 2 points with it. So one is to really help families understand what it's like in their loved one's shoes, but also vice versa, of helping someone who's in active addiction or maybe in early recovery understand what it's like in their family's shoes. So you saw how the story sort of jumped from perspective to perspective. Specifically in that story, you get the parents, you get Gabby, the little sister, and you get Marco's perspective. And you get to sort of see what it's like being the parents who are lost and confused and don't know what to do with their son anymore and blaming themselves. And then you have the sister who's this good girl who does everything right, who's just invisible to the family because the addiction just overshadows. And there's that breakout moment towards the end where she's like, guys, hello, I'm right here. Can you see me? And they're like, hey, not right now.
Right.
Just getting lost.
Dr. Jeffrey Huttman's actually in here. He actually helped write the questions for the book, the discussion questions.
Oh, at the end. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
well, thank you for watching, Dr. Huttman, and for helping write this fantastic book.
So the other reason for the book, though, too, was also to be used in treatment centers and family programs. And that's also why I did ask Dr. Huttman for help in designing discussion questions that can be used. So the stories themselves can be read in a half hour, and then you can use the second half hour of an hour-long group to discuss. My whole goal with this book is to create conversation. Always. That's what I wanted with it. That's why it's so short. It can be read within an hour and a half, and it flows. Each chapter is like 2 pages long. I want it to be very fast, very easy to read, but still touch on those emotional points so that you can understand what it's like in everybody's shoes and then really have a conversation about it.
So Blake, you told us a little bit about, why you were inspired to do this, right? Because of your own experience with your family. But so how can family be beneficial to someone who's in treatment? We hear a lot about the family plays a huge role in recovery and success rates are up 80% if a family is highly involved in treatment. But can you tell us about why? What do families what are they able to do to help a loved one?
There's a couple of answers to that. So first of all, the family system gets so heavily affected by a loved one's addiction. And we touched on that earlier, and it almost gets poisoned in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. So if the person has the substance use disorder gets better, but the other people don't take the antidote to that poison, then the family system remains sick and the person returns home to a sick family system. Mm-hmm. So it's important that the family also gets better while their loved one is healing. They start working on their resentments. They work on their communication, their healthy boundaries, and start to gain that sense of self-efficacy back and understanding themselves again. So they're not so just wrapped up in their loved one anymore, because that's what ends up happening. It just becomes like a drain, the person who's addicted, and everyone is just stuck in that cycle going down the drain. So
everyone's life in essence starts to revolve around the addict.
Correct. So we want to
Yeah.
break that cycle, but also let the family heal and get better and almost hit that reset button so that the person's coming home to a healthier household where people know how to communicate in a healthier way, and they can really work through their issues in the proper way without feeling like the person's coming back home and being put right back into that addict box that no one wants to be put in. And then they end up going right back, that self-fulfilling prophecy, going right back to what their parents or their wife or their spouse or whomever is making them out to be.
You want to treat me like an addict? I'll show you an addict, right?
Yeah,
I'll show you what I could do to me.
Yeah.
We are in recovery, or we who struggle with substance use disorders are the best at using at people. We love to use people as excuses, and we love to use at people. Fine, you want to do this to me? I'm going to use, and I'm using because of you.
Yeah.
So if people can come home and have a healthier system, they are a lot less likely to end up going back to their old habits.
Yeah.
We're breaking a healthy cycle.
Yeah. So now I know families can also be a very strong factor in continued use, right? Like family is not always healthy. So what are some things to watch out for? Like now we're talking to the person who's trying to enter into recovery. How can a family be toxic? What can a person do to protect themselves from a toxic family?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, a toxic family is one of the biggest dangers out there to someone's recovery. And honestly, I think that if a family isn't willing to do the work or is remaining toxic or maybe is stuck in addiction themselves, I actually do think it's best for the person to create as much distance as they can for as long as they can until they're in a stronger place to be able to handle the rest of their family. But there is no real good way to deal with somebody who's extremely toxic outside of removing them from your life to gain a better perspective. There's some of the work that we do, honestly, with the company that I own and work with a partner, where we do have to call out a lot of family members. And there's a lot of times where we start working with families and we have to just say, you know what, we're going to put all of our attention on your loved one because you are too sick and I don't see you getting better. And we're actually going to have to figure out a way to remove your loved one from this relationship. Ooh. And it's important.
So do you get a lot of times like the families where like, wait, hold on. Like, I'm paying you to help us fix him. This isn't, why are we talking about me all of a sudden?
You're supposed to be backing me up here.
Yeah. So that's where in the beginning, I would say more of, we got a lot of that, but we're very honest up front now of going like, we're going to tell you black and white what we're seeing. And if there's an issue, like, be prepared for some really hard conversations and recognize like you might be the problem. And we might have to tell you that. So we actually get a little less pushback on it. And we're actually seeing better results by telling people that up front. People tend to be more open then to hear that constructive criticism and are maybe more likely to change.
Yeah, they got warned.
They got warned, right? And even when we do interventions, I mean, part of our intervention process isn't, we don't just get a phone call and just go jump into the car and go. We're doing digging. We're screening every single family member. And there's been times where a mom hired us and we're like, hey, mom, you can't come to this intervention. You're sicker than your daughter. Like, you cannot come. I'm sorry. Ooh. It's not going to be successful. Our job is to help your loved one get to treatment safely. I'm sorry, but you can't come. We don't think we're going to be able to do it if you're there.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point,
you got a cool comment. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I'm saying because at that point, they're just going to try to take over the whole thing anyway and be like, see, these people are here because of your problems. I'm right. You're fucked up. You're the problem. And it's just like, then you're just a referee at that point.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes the problem is a result of their loved one's substance use disorder, or it may have been a result from the parents did something to them as a kid, then they develop a substance use disorder. Then in response to that, they develop more problems, and it just kind of ping pongs back and forth. Yeah. But there's times where family members get so angry or so resentful that they are now toxic.
Well, that brings up a really interesting question, or I think it's interesting. So much therapy is often around like, well, why? Like, why am I like this? How did this start or whatever? But a lot of, 12-step recovery is not concerned with that, right? It's, I don't care why you're an addict. It's just, are you or aren't you? Right. Um, Thoughts? How do you approach it in your work? Are you more of like a, hey, we know it's a problem, we can sort out the rest later, let's just get to it, or do you take the time to kind of walk with families, walk them through that and kind of figure out like, well, where is the root? Where did this all come from?
I would say it depends on how long we have with them. So if we know that we're going to have some time with them and we're going to have some time to work through things, I think both are crucial. You have to understand the why so that you know what you're working on moving forward and you know how to recognize it, look at the past behaviors, and then we know how to recognize it moving forward when it pops back up again. But I think people need therapy. They need to understand the underlying issues. I also think they need a practical set of a practical set of rules or principles to live by moving forward as well, or a strategy moving forward as well. So it's like, let's look at the past, but let's also figure out how we can address the now and the future as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that was such a great answer.
Well, it's true. And there's people who do just one, they just do the therapy. For us, we believe in the combination of therapy and coaching and family coaching. Because coaching is a much more practical approach of here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what I want you to do in the future. Here's the steps to get there. Therapy obviously is looking at the underlying issues, the toxicity, the resentments, coping mechanisms.
Gain some understanding around all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I didn't know until I read the book, Blake, is that you started off as a BHT. That is, do you think that helped you with your?
That's a behavioral health technician for what's her name in Idaho?
Wisconsin.
Tracy in Wisconsin.
Tracy in Wisconsin.
The listener.
Behavioral health technician.
That was a Smartless reference for Tracy in Wisconsin as well.
Smartless is a podcast available on. I'll stop.
That's also for Tracy. Yeah. Actually, yeah, as a BHT, originally working in just pure mental health, in high psych, low functioning mental health, and then actually working for Dr. Jeffrey Huttman, who popped in here. I started off as a BHT and then moved into the role of director of admissions. And one of the things that he said to me when he suggested that if I wanted the role of admissions director, is I needed to go back to school and become a counselor.
Because doing admissions means working with families that are in crisis, right?
Exactly. And he always wanted a clinical approach to this. And that was really one of the big focus, which is where I, interestingly enough, found myself working with families. And it wasn't just, here, let me sell you on the program, get you in no matter what. It was really let me coach you and guide you through this whole process. Let me be that voice of reason for you throughout the process from before, during, and even after treatment. Let me stay in touch with you. Let me make sure everything's okay. So building relationships with these families so they felt like they had somebody to turn to when they didn't know what to do.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about codependency, because I feel like it's kind of become a word that's in the pop culture vernacular. I know sometimes my wife's watching dramas and I hear them drop a little psychobabble, and they'll say things like codependency, and they'll say things like enabling. And I don't know that a lot of people truly know what those mean, right? Just because they get thrown around so much. So, as someone who specializes in this, tell us a little about what is codependency, what is enabling, and how do you even know if you are codependent or are enabling your loved one?
There's so many different ways it shows up, just like addiction. I mean, there's so many different ways and complexities to codependency. I think the best way I've ever heard it summed up was, if your loved one is cut, you bleed. And that is the best, one sentence description I've heard of codependency. But essentially the way that I've looked at it is, it's a strong belief that you can control your loved one's addiction, that it's within your power to control it and that you can fix it and that you'll do anything it takes to get there. And that your emotional well-being is dependent on their physical and emotional well-being.
I can't be okay until they're okay.
I can't be okay until they're okay. And then once they're okay, I am now purposeless. So I'm going to keep this cycle going as much as I can unintentionally. I'm going to stay sick. I'm still so enraptured in your life. I am going to do everything I can to be involved in your recovery. And I'm going to be worried about every step of the way. And it shows up in a lot of really interesting ways.
It's not like Stockholm syndrome. What is it like in
Munchausen
the movie
by
Mystery?
proxy.
Munchausen by proxy.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're in love with your captor. Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, in a sense, but that, and again,
that is so like, we talk about how addicts take people emotionally hostage, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Woo. Okay. So
Wow.
then what's enabling and how do you know if you're enabling?
All right. So I always like to look at the difference between enabling and supporting. Okay. So enabling is behaving in a way that is allowing your loved one's negative coping mechanisms, i.e. their behaviors surrounding addiction, to thrive. Supporting is supporting and loving your loved one in a way that is enabling healthy behaviors in your loved one and diminishing their negative coping mechanisms, is the way that I've always looked at it. So supporting is something like, I will give you money, but it will only be for treatment.
Right.
Enabling is, I will give you money every time you call me and ask for food, even though I know you're badly addicted to X, Y, and Z.
And you don't eat much anyway.
Right.
I remember that sinking feeling when my mom told me that she was going to start going to Al-Anon meetings, and I was just like, "Fuck, this is going to end soon now."
Yeah. I mean, enabling to me is not so much about enabling the person; it's about enabling the disease. You're enabling the disease to continue on and continue living and thriving in this person, in the host.
So what do you think of, like, when people see like that show Intervention and, they draw that line in the sand and they're like, either you're going to treatment right now with this guy and all these A&E cameras, or you're never going to speak to any of us ever again and we're cutting you off and you live on the streets. Like, what do you think of that approach?
I think it's a little bit for TV. I think there's different approaches. I think that family does sometimes have to get to that point. I do think to protect the family system, protect themselves, and create a dynamic shift, that people do have to do that. There's some statistics out there that I think it's interventions, even ones like that, are successful 85% of the time. And
that's pretty good.
The remaining 15% of the time, people end up getting treatment somewhere within a week or 2 weeks down the line, if the loved ones actually hold and follow through on the boundaries they set during the intervention. Or maybe it's something like 14% of people end up getting treatment, and then 1% end up never getting it. Yeah. So interventions are very successful if they're done right. I don't think doing it in that way to be cruel is okay. I think what you just said, though, is it's really important to not pass over, is that they offered them help. So you're giving them the option of taking help, but you're also saying, if you don't get help, I can no longer allow you to be in our lives and support this lifestyle that you're living, that you're slowly killing yourselves and all of us around you. So either take the help we're offering you, or we have to step back and allow you to be responsible for your own decisions.
God, that sounds, my kids are all young, but like, I can't imagine how difficult that is, for parents to say something like that to their children, and be able to stick to it. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen as often as you'd think, actually, in terms of a total cutoff. Yeah. There's usually some degree of it that occurs, or some degree of boundary setting that has to occur to get somebody motivated to go to treatment. But there are times where it has to be a complete, like, you're out of our lives if you don't do this.
Wow.
And what that is that exact moment that happened for me. It was where my dad told me, good luck finding your way home. We want nothing to do with you. It was my motivator to actually want to get sober. Yeah. So it was tough love. That was still love. It was just the love was, he was so hurt because he loves me so much that he has to step away from me. So
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed that, that's the most painful thing in the world.
Yeah, it's really
hard. Story on here before about how like the last time I went to treatment, my mom was so mad that I decided to go to sober living that, she picked me up from treatment, took me to get a haircut and, took me to Chili's or whatever. And then she gave me $100 and said like, that's it. Don't call me. And like, I saw it in her eyes. I knew that like she meant that.
Yeah.
And I'd already decided to be sober, but that moment really solidified to me like you're on your own, bud. And it had a similar. It's wild to me like how similar all our stories are.
All of them, all of us. It's that same feeling.
I was just.
I'd love to see.
No, I was just.
What were you just going to say?
How like cyclical addiction is, and how it's so similar for each person. It's really the same story with different actors every time. Right. And it's the same thing within the family system. It's the same cycle repeating over and over and over and over again. And an intervention doesn't have to be like what you see on the TV show. Intervention in general is a stopping of that cycle and shifting the dynamic. So they're changing the family system so that we are now going to respond and react differently to your behaviors. And if you don't like it, like you're on your own, but we are changing the way that we're reacting to what you're doing to yourself and to our family.
Man, I'd love to see if the audience has any questions for Blake. In the meantime, though, Blake, I did some research and it turns out that you are the most handsome man who ever wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Get out of town. Really. It's one of those things that I didn't expect to happen, but when I got that award in the mail, I accepted it with humility and went with it.
Fantastic.
You know what? I think Jason might be working on a book. He's coming for the title.
No. Well, listen, you can have it. Joseph, by the way, we were talking about Mexico before, and it just got released yesterday.
Oh my God. You know what? Get with me offline. I have some friends that own treatment centers in Mexico.
Okay.
I actually have a friend who, this is a really cool story. We were in treatment together in 2007. Whatever year Brittany had her breakdown, we were in treatment together. He stayed sober since then. I had to do a little bit more research, but he went back to school, became a psychologist, and then bought the treatment center that we were in and now runs it.
Wow.
And I got to speak for their like alumni thing a couple years ago, and it was wild.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool.
Shout out to Ryan O'Connor chiming in.
Ryan O'Connor.
That's my boy. Talk about handsome.
Ooh, yeah, Ryan O'Connor.
He's a looker.
Yes.
Eyes
gorgeous man.
Just that look that he's got could just kill.
It's a shame that admissions only happens over the phone, not on FaceTime. Because,
but yeah, I, in terms of this, I honestly, I would have to connect you with somebody because I sold the Spanish rights to a publisher in Spain who was starting a collection on addiction and mental health. So this was one of the first books that they decided to translate, and it's the first in their collection that just got released.
So it's a Castilian Spanish translation. So it's not "Yo te quiero más," it's "Yo te quiero más." Because in Spain they
can we have Joseph do the audiobook for the Spanish speaking version, because Blake did not do his own. Blake was not the reader in the Audible version. It was somebody else, and I'm not even going to say anything.
You could say it. Like it's awful.
It sounded like the guy from Movie Phone.
Exactly. It's so weird. But when the lady said to me, I asked her, I'm like, so am I going to be doing the reading of the book? And I'm talking to her on the phone, and she's like, would you want to listen to your voice for 2 hours? And I'm like, okay, good point. I'll step back.
Yeah, no offense to the guy who did the voiceover, but like, I know your voice. You have a good voice. You have a good speaking voice, and why wouldn't they just,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But I understand. We've started doing this thing, Blake, or I've started doing it where the day after we record, I listen to the audio while I'm at the gym, and I try to find little moments that I think are really cool for Jason to be able to kind of splice up and make little kind of trailers for the shows. And listening to myself speak is excruciating.
It's horrible. I've never once listened to myself speak on a podcast. Never once. I've never heard a single episode, and I've been a guest on a lot, and I've hosted my own. I can't do it. And even watching videos of myself, I hate seeing myself talk. That's why COVID with Zoom and you're constantly looking at yourself talk, I hate it.
Real quick before we wrap it up, again, viewers, this is your opportunity. If you have any questions, Blake is much more of an expert on families and systems and dynamics than either Jason or I. So please feel free to throw those out there. Because this will live on in perpetuity and someone will hear it someday and it will help them. But I did want to ask you, Blake, about boundaries. It's not rapid fire question time yet, Greg. You need to get that graphic. Blake, we have Andrew Sawson in the chat.
Oh, the man.
He has never chatted on any of these. You should feel very honored.
That's
and
my
distinguished.
guy. Thank you, Andrew.
But real quick, just
he's awesome.
for my own edification, right? What's the difference between boundaries and rules, and what's just like a simple framework for setting boundaries, just for our listeners to just have?
Man, I mean, to me, boundaries shouldn't be broken, right? So I boundaries and rules can be broken. Boundaries to me are something that we're setting to protect ourselves. So they are essentially guidelines of how you are willing to be treated yourself, or how you're willing to have people behave in the house, in your household. So setting those boundaries are meant to be healthy for the person who's setting the boundaries. They're saying something like, if you're going to come home to my house, you are not to ask me for money. You need to pay for your own way. You need to pay rent. So basically it's saying, because that you had a problem in the past constantly funding someone's lifestyle. So it's saying, I will no longer give you money to fund your lifestyle anymore. I need to protect myself.
Love it.
Sort of the best answer I can give you on the fly.
All right. Now it's rapid fire question time. Greg, you can throw the graphic up.
Choom, choom, choom. It's our sound effects.
I thought that was a rapid fire question, and I like my stomach started to hurt because I'm like, how am I
going
going
to know? No, that was succinct question time. Now it's rapid fire.
True rapid fire question time.
Let's start easy, man. We're at an ice cream shop. They have every ice cream flavor ever known to man. You get 2 scoops on a cone. What 2 scoops are you getting?
You're gonna hate my answer. I'm going vanilla and double vanilla. I'm a vanilla guy.
Oh,
yeah. No, if I had a little buzzer. What?
Milkshake, I'm going cookies and cream. But
interesting.
For ice cream, I'm going pure vanilla. A good vanilla, there's nothing better.
Yeah, my girlfriend Gabby, that's her favorite too, and she always says it's the most popular for a reason. And I'm like, well, can't argue with that.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
If Blake Cohen had a signature candle, what would that candle smell like?
Oh, vanilla.
Jason,
can I say the answer? Can I say the answer that I really want to say is?
Give us the truth.
Well, no, I guess not a signature. What I was going to say, there's a smell that I love, but it's not really appropriate. I love the smell of marijuana, but I don't smoke marijuana. I can't. I'm in recovery, but I love the smell of it. But that's not. I wouldn't say it's my signature. My signature.
So you want a candle that smells like Denver.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
that'd be if I want to relax. But a signature Blake candle would probably be Polynesian sauce flavor from Chick-fil-A.
Oh,
exotic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. If you had to pick a song to be the soundtrack to your recovery, what would it be?
I Want to Break Free by Queen.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a nice one. You don't hear that one very often. That's
I think it's because I want to break free. I want to break free from the lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need you. And I think that most of my life was just spent trying to please other people and to fit into other people's boxes. And I want to break out of the boxes that people built for me and just be myself.
Well, you know what I like about that is like a recovery anthem is that like there's always something else to break free of, right?
Yeah.
Another behavior, another old thought, another, resentment, whatever it may be. So it's like constantly growing. I like it.
Speaking of breaking free, by the way, and things to break free from, I am now over 2 months free from nicotine, which has been very difficult to stop. But I'm good. I'm finally feeling good.
You were a vapor, right? You were a big vapor, weren't you? Or was yeah?
I mean,
or
I don't
cigarettes.
want to be referred to. No one ever wants to be referred to as a big vapor, but yeah, I mean, I vaped.
Well, I mean, we worked together in an office, and I remember my office was the vape-free zone, and I
Right.
remember you a couple of times being like, I'm like fucking dude,
Yeah.
still vaping here. But yeah,
Jason had to set a
Well,
boundary
I'm-
real quick.
I'm proud. I did. I learned it from watching you setting boundaries.
We did get a really good question in the chat that I don't want to let it slide before we kind of start wrapping things up. So this is from Carly. She said, honest question. If you have a relationship that requires boundaries, should you really be in it?
I saw that. And I think that in terms of, depends how serious the relationship is. Sometimes there's some relationships that are really hard to break, like our siblings or our parents or our children. So sometimes as family, we're quote unquote forced to be in those relationships. So we have to set boundaries to make sure they're functional. If you're just dating somebody and it's not a serious relationship, then I would say there's some red flags there probably if you have to set boundaries.
3 weeks in and you're setting boundaries.
Yeah. But I mean, boundaries, honestly, to me are healthy. It's telling people how you're willing to be treated.
Yeah, because I'd actually say like any healthy relationship requires boundaries to some degree, right? Even if it's little stuff like I'm not okay with you leaving the toilet seat up, or I'm not okay with being the only one to do the dishes, and whatever.
I don't think there's anything wrong with boundaries, and it's just sometimes certain boundaries are a little bit more serious than others and stronger than others. But like I said, essentially it's breaking a cycle of allowing people to treat you in an unhealthy way.
Love it. So we're getting towards the close of our show, and so we do want to take a second and kind of plug your stuff for you, Blake. So Blake's book is I Love You More. You can find it on Amazon and I assume most major booksellers. Jason would like you to hold up the book real quick again for everybody to see.
I thought you were doing like a fishing thing. I didn't know what you were doing.
No.
And also Yo Te Quiero Más, available in Spanish for the first time ever. Check both of those out. I really like the Spanish cover. I like the style.
Yeah, it's cool.
You can reach Blake at nextlevelrecoveryassociates.com and learn about all the wonderful work that he does with NAMI, with his interventions, with the family coaching, all that good stuff. If you need help or know someone who does, that's where you can direct them to reach out to Blake. And Blake, I'd like to give you the floor to, you've got, now is your opportunity to kind of say whatever it is you'd like to say while you've got the platform. What message you'd like to give to our listeners at home?
Honestly, if I can just ask for one thing, it's just for people to go to namibrower.com or .com.org.
Probably org.
And donate if you can. I mean, it's a smaller, namibrower.org. If you can go on there and donate, it is a smaller chapter. They do need help. There's a lot more people these days because of COVID who are struggling with mental illness, and they need the constant support to grow their groups, to hire people. We need that support now pretty desperately. We're also working on some really cool things that people can call in crisis and not have to worry about the police attacking them or hurting them. They're about training. This is about training the police force. So we're working on some really cool things. There's some really cool emergency first responders that are just for mental health. So if you guys can donate and help support these initiatives, that'd be amazing.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you once more, Blake, for your time today. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you guys. I miss you both.
Yeah. I
Miss you
miss when
too,
we worked
man.
together. I always think about that time that we did to fill in Barry's office.
Yeah.
Just randomly.
Random rabbi showed up and we did to fill in. I still have the pictures in my phone. It pops up every once in a while.
That's some Florida shit right there, right? Just random rabbi.
I actually think about you guys a lot of Half Baked Denver, candle coming soon, Half Baked Denver. There's a tattoo right here of an exclamation point. I took you to get that. Yeah, we went to go get as a group together.
Yeah. That was when I was everybody's tattoo dad.
Yeah,
I was tattoo dad that day. But thank you to all our listeners, all our viewers. Thank you for everybody who interacted. Please don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, text your friends about it. Leave a review. Leave a review. Thank you, Blake.
Leave a review.
And Jason, when we're talking about addiction, I've heard that there's 1,000 ways in. What do you think about that?
Well, Joseph, I believe that there's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out. So if you're in, we hope you find your way out. So bad.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.